So I wanted to at least get the code that I have checked in on a different fork for this, the rewrite of the trying to mess with the data out on the database. But anyway, the quick demo here is you test this. You need to put a date in. I could update that sometime. You submit it, and it basically, the idea is it creates a request for to the tutors in the area, and once they respond, then in fact it takes you to a chat, which you can start to chat with the tutor. Now the things that I wanted to get beyond, there's a lot of formatting and a lot of issues, but what I was trying to get there is this. Okay, so if we go, I was just trying to get the interaction going. I'm not connecting up the channel, but it should be a live database. And if we go into the real-time database, the P2, it should be it's the ME. In fact, I'm kind of hacking a lot of this together just to get the flow going, but there's the chat session, so that's only the two users. So SSS, and but at least the data flow is going. Anyway, what I did, and the reason I'm doing this screencast is just to remind myself. I went back in, and what I did, let's just go through from the top. So the app, I kind of cut out all the components at the top level app, and I just have the main component, which goes to the request form, and then the call Ralph, and then the session ID. Now I'm not using request. The idea is the request ID goes up to some automated function, and that gets distributed to, it basically looks up the local users, the local service providers, and then it distributes it and that's stuff that I haven't got put in yet. But I wanted to get the flow going, and then probably clean up an interaction, and maybe automate an interaction. But anyway, the flow would be, assuming the person's logged in, which is another whole issue, but I'm not just going to assume that somehow it's authenticated right now, and because when the request goes out, it has to go out with some and it could be a dynamically unique generated, but I don't want to go through that right now. But it goes into this call Ralph, which is the old test component. So the request form, let's look at the request form. Here's the request form, and it's the old the request form is the sessions form, format that I copied out of, and this, in fact, there's the old one, the Ralph form and Ralph detail, but I pulled that out into a request, and let's see, I think I did. Let's see, let's go back up to app. Again, I kind of have a hacking this together just to get the generic flow going. So test. So session detail is session Ralph detail, and request detail, request detail. Okay, so request session is still going into the old session, into the Ralph detail of the session detail, but the request is a new one. The request. So my thinking is that first, it's the request form. So this is the request form, is from the request form that we were just seeing, request form. This actually submits it to a request, create request, I think. Yeah, create request. This is actually sending it to the request and request attendee. So it's basically generating what I used to do for a session, but as a request in a new database format, which I can show here. Real time. And that's what the session and the request. So my thinking was we take from the request, which is these are the ones that well, let's see if this is the one I just, anyway, it doesn't really matter if I just did it. But anyway, these are the ones that I've been generating out of that form automatically. And then I was going to have a function that deals with the form on the server. That then what it does is it sends out the thing and sends back the information that I'm faking out and the next thing. Because if you look at this action request form, yeah, what it does is it creates the request with the values, and then it just pushes it to this call Ralph thing. I think eventually what it will be is that push history goes out to the alerting system that is in the function. So I don't know if that's dynamic or whatever, but anyway, I just push it to the call Ralph. The call Ralph, if we go back to app, where did the app go? Call back to app. Call Ralph is that test component. So, and test component features call Ralph. There it is, test component, and that's the old one, but I hacked it up just to show the map and show attendees, which needs to be that data. This data needs to be dynamically or something updated. But the concept is it gives the student a little bit of feedback about what tutors are being alerted and where they are potentially, and all that logistics has to be worked out, but I just have a place for it. And then once, and this is the one thing, and once the if we go back to that, let's see, call Ralph. Once and this is the other one, how the transition happens from the map that is seen. And what I was thinking of doing is even maybe when we go to the chat, is it instead of the chat, it just overlays with, instead of this map, it overlays with the map with the potential tutors, or maybe it just zooms in on the tutor that responds with the map, and then the location, kind of, because the next step is trying to aggregate the meeting location and time and stuff like that, and capture that conversation in that transaction, so to speak. So but anyway, so let's go back up to app, because that's a good, the app. So it basically goes here, it goes up to the server in the request, comes back down as a request response. And like I said, that might be a dynamic function, but this is the screen it hits. And then it goes to the session ID from there, which is what, if you go to the test component that call Ralph, all I'm doing is shoving on that. What I did is created that button, and I just am shoving it to a session that I know that exists. And that's what I need to work on now, is passing these sessions around and maybe getting the function up. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out the data logistics right now and the movement, but I'm trying to do it through the UI so that I have something that Ralph can wrap his head around. Anyway, so I'm going to check this code in as it is now. I just was trying to give a little bit of overview. And and then I should show, I do have, and this is the other thing, I'm trying to call it the FR for fork Ralph, and then a version for the documentation. And this is the Goober test app docs, and then I also have the featured test stuff. But this is test. So this is the the previous fork, and I messed up because I don't think the previous fork had 15 checked in, and I have 15 in the one. So I don't know. I'm gonna figure that out later. If I have to merge, I'll probably take some of this stuff and merge it back in or whatever. And I'll deal with that later. Basically, because the code is forked at 14, but I had 15 in there before, and I didn't check in 15. But I went and started hacking for this this Ralph fork, just as a warning. And I would love to get and there's the 15's in the new fork, and that was what I forked from, actually. That's enough.